Ukraine's President Zelensky has defended the signing of a bill which has provoked some of the biggest protests in Ukraine since Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Critics of the new law say it weakens the independence of Ukraine's anti-corruption bodies. Mr. Zelensky says the main anti-graft agencies will continue to function. There were protests, as you can see here. They were in various cities, but the largest was in the centre of the capital, Kyiv. There's a renewed push for peace going on as well. Russia and Ukraine meeting for a fresh round of ceasefire talks in Istanbul. They're due to start in a few hours' time. President Zelensky proposing the talks at the weekend, days after President Trump threatened Russia with severe sanctions if there was no ceasefire between Moscow and Kyiv within 50 days. It comes amid escalating attacks and growing international pressure to end the war. Moscow, though, has already said the discussions will be very difficult. Straight to our Russia editor with BBC Monitoring, Vitaly Shevchenko, who joins us from Istanbul, where those talks are taking place. Before we get to the talks, Vitaly, though, can you explain the significance of these huge protests that we've seen across Ukrainian cities?
Well, they are the biggest anti-government protests that we've seen since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion. And what this tells us is that this controversial law that was passed by the Ukrainian parliament yesterday, it threatens to break the social contract in Ukraine, where society sort of united around the government and was prepared to put aside any differences for the sake of fighting Russia. Now they're saying this isn't what we've been fighting for these 10 years. We fought against corruption, we fought for democracy, and now this happens. So there's shock and dismay in Ukraine. And President Zelensky, earlier today, he gathered together the heads of Ukraine's main security services and anti-corruption agencies, and he said that for them to work effectively, they have to have sufficient powers, but Russia is our main and only enemy. And also, he said that we hear what society is saying. So I think this was a reference to the protests last night.
And Vitaly, you've been to Istanbul before to cover previous talks. What are the expectations around these ones? Due to start, I think, in about 3.5 hours' time.
Just as before, Lucy, they are pretty low. It's the same delegations, really, the same demands. Ukraine is looking for a ceasefire and a meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. Russia is saying it's too early for any of that. Instead, they want to talk about the memorandum that Russia presented to Ukraine during the previous round of talks back in June. And that memorandum, Lucy, it's essentially a demand for surrender, which Ukraine is not going to accept at this stage. So previous talks resulted in prisoner exchanges, return of dead bodies, thousands of dead bodies. And I think more of such exchanges are more likely than any progress on the key issues that would bring the prospect of peace closer.